Lincoln Legends, Lore and Lagniappe presented by your Lincoln Parish Museum and Historical Society, celebrating 50 years of community support. Enjoy as our museum director, Rick Godley, takes the time to capture the stories of life in Lincoln Parish from the characters of Lincoln Parish. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rick Godley, and this is another edition of Lincoln Legends, Lore, and Lagniappe, brought to you by the Lincoln Parish Museum and Historical Society and our friends at Century Next Bank. For all that you do, what's next for you? Erma Faulkner, Hudson, is our guest today. Can't wait to get into the Erma story. That a lot of folks will have stories about her story, because that's what his story is and her story is. And we are here at the Arbor. It's a beautiful facility. Erma, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
Thank you, Rick, for coming. I'm fine, thank you. And you look very handsome in your dinner jacket. So pleased to be sitting here with you today.
Well, thank you. This is Billy Green's dinner jacket that I found at the museum, and I use it as my prop. So
good for Billy.
And, well, I wanted to kick this off because being at the Lincoln Parish Museum, when I got there 3 years ago, there was a scrapbook of the origins of the Lincoln Parish Museum, which, by the way, 50 years ago, the organization was started. And one of the first articles was Lincoln Parish Museum to be the setting for a blue ribbon dinner. And there is a picture of Mrs. Erma Faulkner, and her son Gary standing there with the former mayor, Elton Pody. So where do you want to begin? You want to begin in the cooking? Because you're notorious for your cooking. And you were starting to tell a story of when and how you began cooking. You want to tell us about that?
I would be delighted. Back when World War II started, all the farmers went to work. My dad went to work, and my mother. Mother had never worked out of the home, but she went to work at the munitions plant in Jacksonville, Arkansas. And that left me and my sister at home because they left at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work, get back at 6 o'clock at night. So we did have outside animals, and my sister took care of the milking the cow and feeding the pigs and all of that. And I went into the kitchen and had supper ready when Mother and Daddy came home. And I've always been fascinated by recipes, and I would collect them and try different things. Mother said, "We'll buy whatever you need. Just have supper ready every night when we come home." And they worked 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. It was the same on Saturday. So, and then on Sunday, Mother's Day of Rest, supposedly, she would tell us, "Bring anybody home from church you want to, and we'll have lunch for everybody." So all my life, we have had big lunches on Sunday. And when my kids came along, I told them the same thing. Bring as many as you want, and we'll never run out of food. But as you see where I am now, this gorgeous arbor, I love it. There's not a kitchen. And the reason I'm here is because I cannot cook anymore. Mm-hmm. And they serve me 3 meals a day, 3 delicious meals, I might add. So it's just been an answer to prayer for me to be here.
Awesome. So how old do you think you were when you first went into the kitchen back in those days? And did you have any kind of, not training, but, your mother lead you and guide you, or did you have to wing and fling this your own?
The best memory I have is before the war started. Mother was home. She made all of our clothes, all of our dresses were homemade, not ready-made, bought in a store. And on a rainy day, she'd get out the machine and fabric and to to sew, and I would pull up my little chair with my doll, and she'd cut out doll clothes for me, and I would sew them. But that didn't last very long because there was going to be mealtime. So the best memory I have is she would tell me to go in the kitchen and take 2 cups of Great Northern beans and look them good, because sometimes there was a rock in the bag, and be sure you get the rocks out of the beans. Wash them through 3 waters, cut a big chunk of salt meat, pork salt meat, which is basically the same as bacon. We killed our own hogs and had a lot of pork to eat. But anyway, drop that into the water, cover it sufficiently, turn on the fire and let it cook. And then about 30 minutes before we were to eat, she'd give me the cornbread recipe, and I'd go back in the kitchen and make what we called a pone of cornbread. And that would be our lunch. And I guess that was my introduction to cooking.
Sensing what I sense from you and how you're, we started here by Erma saying, I've cooked for everybody, that it wasn't a chore. It was obviously a labor of love right from the beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so that's the early days. How did that love for Erma cooking grow, and what happened after that? Growing up, got married at a young age.
Yes.
But keep the recipes in mind, and then we'll talk about Dick Hudson.
Okay, I do recall one of the first year of my marriage, I was going to make a pecan pie.
Mm-hmm.
And I had made pecan pies before, but I was a new bride and I wanted to show off. So I put that rascal in the oven, and after about 40 minutes, I opened the oven and it still jiggled in the middle. So I put it back into the oven and cooked it a while longer. Opened the oven, it still jiggled in the middle. Cooked it a little bit longer. I don't know how long I cooked that pie. Needless to say, you could not cut it. Leonard Faulkner was Harold's brother, and he knew the pie was cooking, and he made a big to-do over the flop I had made, but he did manage to eat it. He couldn't cut it. He let it melt in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
All right, so you met Harold, age 17, you told us. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about what struck your fancy about Harold, and take us through that episode or that period of your time before you got to Ruston.
Okay. My dad, after the war was over, he had learned to be an electrician, and he was the electrician for Robb and Raleigh Theaters in Little Rock, and that's where we lived. We had moved what we called into town by then, but I still finished high school at Jacksonville High School. I'd catch the inner city bus every morning and go to Jacksonville to finish the 12th grade. But at that time, the theaters were gorgeous, and they had doormen and had people with flashlights to seat you. And Daddy came home one night and he said, and I worked at one of the theaters. I worked at the Pulaski on weekends making popcorn and in charge of the concession stand. And he came home one night and he said, there's somebody I think you need to meet at the Arkansas Theater. And I said, who is that? He said, our new doorman. He said, he's over 6 feet tall. We had to special order him a uniform, and he looks pretty good in it. And I said, well, why don't we go down there for a movie? So we did, and Daddy actually introduced me to him. Since he worked at the Arkansas Theater and I worked at the Pulaski on Saturdays, he would come for his coffee break, or supper time break, I guess. And we just fell in love, and first thing I knew, there was an engagement ring, and my family loved him, and he had brought me to Louisiana to meet his family, and I loved them, so it just worked out, and we had many years together. We started our family in 1955, and Harold died of pancreatic cancer in 1986. So,
Do you remember the name of the movie that you went to go see with your father and check out the doorman?
no, I would not remember
Okay.
that, but I know I was enthralled when I saw this very handsome young man in that Robin Raleigh Theater uniform.
So he was from Ruston, his family, and so that
He's
got
from Shudrint.
from Shudrint. Okay.
He had enrolled at Tech when he finished high school. He's almost 4 years older than me. And Tech didn't suit his fancy, so his daddy had a radio repair shop here. No TVs, of course, at that time. And he sent him to Little Rock to Drawn School of Radio, and he worked at the theater part-time as he went to school. That's why he was there.
All right, so now you find yourself in Lincoln Parish, still cooking. You got better at cooking the pecan pie, I would presume, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so when you say I've cooked for everyone, do you remember the first time you cooked for more than just the family? That somebody said, you know what? We need to get Erma Faulkner here to prepare something for our group, our church, our organization. When did that happen? Do you remember that?
It just evolved.
It evolved.
Yeah. We are very active at Temple Baptist Church, and if there was a need, a casserole, someone's sick, something happened to somebody, we always made sure that there was some food there that I had cooked, prepared. And then we made adult friends. We had many, many friends, but we had a group that we played cards with regularly, or dominoes, and I would fix supper, and they'd come, and we'd have maybe as many as 4 card tables, which would be 16 people for supper, and then we would clean up the kitchen and play cards, and then have a dessert, and that was almost every weekend. If it wasn't at my house, it was somebody else's.
And again, it's a labor of love, I would say, right? It's not like, oh boy, we got company here, I got to go cook. That never entered into your thought process, right? That is awesome. All right, so now so it went from a radio for Harold, learning how to repair radios, and somehow it got into Faulkner Heating and Air.
Yes.
When was that, do you know?
In 1951, we moved to Houston, Texas, and Harold went before I did to see what kind of work was available, and he saw a Strauss Frank truck in an alley, a serviceman's truck, and he approached the guy and said, "Are they hiring at Strauss Frank?" And he said, "Well, follow me to the office and we'll see." And sure enough, he knew enough about small appliances and things like that, and air conditioning was just coming out.
Right.
The big commercial jobs were just beginning in 1951, and so he got instructed from the ground up on how to do that, and how to bid, and how to install commercial units as well as window units. And window units was a big thing when we moved back to Ruston in 1957. and it just went from there and was a
So 1955, you go to Houston. It takes only 2 years for him to get schooled and tooled and trained. Did he open up his business then at Faulkner Heating and Air? Or did he come back and work for someone else?
he came back with it. I had worked all the time. We were in Houston also, and I don't know how to put this. Harold was not a stingy person. He was one that watched his money.
Sure.
And we didn't need my salary, so we put it in the credit union where I worked. So I went to work for Employers Casualty Company at 2502 Fannin Street, Houston, Texas. I think it's still there. Anyway, kept my money in the credit union, and when we decided it was time for him to go into business in Ruston, we checked that money out, and he bought a service truck and rented a building, and which we eventually bought, and out on Farmville Highway, and we were set to go. By that time, we'd had Gary. He was born in fact, today's his 70th birthday. Happy birthday, Gary. Where was I?
You moved back to Ruston. Your savings got the business going, got the truck going, and that was 1957.
57.
And you're ready to go. So, all right, starting a business is a bold venture. Were there lean times in the early days, or did it just kind of succeed right from the start? Because he was going to be a worker.
Yeah.
In other words, did you ever have to eat peanut butter sandwiches?
No,
Okay.
no. It just kind of escalated because air conditioning was brand new, and everybody wanted a window unit. They might not want to fully air condition their home, but the big start was he was a carrier dealer here, and the distributor in Shreveport talked him into buying like 100, 200. It was a big responsibility if you can think about getting that much stock for your shelves, so to speak. But he did that when there was a special deal. You buy so many, you get a better deal. So, and they went just like hotcakes. So that got him off on the start.
So Faulkner's Heating and Air, 1957, Eisenhower years, moving into the 60s. What's Erma Faulkner doing at that time with her cooking? You're just still doing what you've always done, which is prepare for friends, loved ones, and strangers?
Right. I'm trying to think of the name of the organization young men were a member of, and the women had a part in that too.
Not JC's, not Kiwanis Club. It was a civic organization. JC's. I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he got involved in that, and then you got involved, right?
Yeah, and I just made friends, and I always liked to help if I could. So I was president of the organization for 2 or 3 times because nobody else wanted it. But anyway, and I would make desserts a lot and just have friends over for coffee and a piece of pie at nighttime. But there again, it just evolved.
Right. So
The main thing is I have a daughter, and when she was 3 years old, as I said, we were in Temple Church, and they decided they wanted a church hostess. So I got the job, and I cooked supper every Wednesday night in the old temple church for whoever wanted to come. We never knew how many, but and I devised. I'd never made homemade rolls before, so I looked at different recipes and I devised my own recipe. And I guess if I'm famous for anything, it would be cinnamon rolls. In fact, I've had people tell me, every time I think about you, I think of a cinnamon roll. I've not made cinnamon rolls now in several years. But
So I bet church attendance was pretty strong on Wednesday night after you got control of the kitchen.
Ruth Potts told me once, she had a young son at the time, and she told me one time that when Frankie was home, she just asked him, "What do you remember most?" Thought it was going to be a spiritual answer to her question. "What did you enjoy most about growing up in Temple Church?" And he said, "Wednesday night and Miss Erma's rolls."
Well, there's something scriptural about that, casting bread on your waters and the bread of life and no, nourishment for sure. All right, so that helps me understand too. I mean, I kind of want to fast forward, but you can stop me anytime because I moved to Ruston in '82, and then this restaurant called Erma's opened up in downtown.
Right.
So, did you have a business prior to Erma's, or was that your first restaurant?
I did. I had had some health problems along the years that went undiagnosed for a long, long time, and my husband took me to every doctor we could think of, but just did not get the proper diagnosis for several years, and that's a whole nother story I'm not going to get into. But he came home one night. I wanted to open a tea room, and the building that I wanted, we found out was not the was tied up with heirs, and they wouldn't sell it. So, but he came in one night and he said he just heard that the Merle Norman Cosmetic Studio was for sale, and maybe he wanted me to get out of the house and do something besides cook, because I stayed in the kitchen and would cook for whoever I could find that needed something. But anyway, we bought that, and I worked in that for I don't know how many years. I had a friend that I brought in with me.
Now, is this on Trenton Street, or was this somewhere else that you remember?
It was on Farmerville Highway.
Farmerville Highway, okay.
Yeah.
Where?
In fact, his building was about a block from where I had my
Which is
studio.
Farmerville Highway, Highway 33.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was that called the tea room? What was that called? Or just Erma's?
No cooking involved in that at all. It was makeup. I did makeovers.
Oh, so you bought the Merle Norman.
Yeah.
I gotcha. All right. So that was a business. How about a restaurant business prior to Erma's?
After Harold died in '86, I had some people I was just 55, and people who were interested and wanted to help and had many suggestions that, why don't you open a restaurant? I had always, in the back of my mind, thought that's what I would like to have. In fact, we bought the Merle Norman because I was thinking of a tea room. So we looked into the possibility of where we would put it, and the old Morgan Lindsay building on Trenton Street next to the old Ruston State Bank was empty. It had been several businesses since the Five and Dime had closed, and Bill Baldwin owned the building, so we worked out an agreement, and I remodeled the building. and made a kitchen and moved my Merle Norman studio into the front. And I also owned the Diet Center at the same time, and we had it on the left side of the building in a hallway. Did you ever eat with me?
Yes, yes, yeah.
You come through the front door, Merle Norman on the left, and the Diet Center on the right, and go all the way back, and all of that was dining room and kitchen. And 2 or 3 years later, we had a terrific rainstorm, and there was something wrong in the third story of that building, and water came in and put me out of business, wrecked my restaurant. And by that time I had remarried, and we were wanting to travel. So Bill and I got together and got it back together and sold it, and that was the end of my restaurant business.
Wow. All right, being in business is a little bit different from just cooking for tables of four and cards and dominoes. Was it a 7 day a week operation, or did
It
you
was
ever have
only lunch 5 days a week.
only lunch 5 days a week, not on Sundays? Gotcha. So yeah, that I remember. I think that's where I first met you, or at Erma's, because of where it is located in downtown Ruston. And all right, so that ended that, but still, we started out this conversation by you saying I cooked for everybody, and started out this whole feature here that a blue ribbon dinner for the Lincoln Parish Museum was set up, and either I'm guessing it's Elton Pody, or what's Gary doing in this picture here? He's the chairman.
Oh,
He's the chair. So no wonder why Gary got. I know somebody who can cook for this. He probably hooked you into that, right?
I'm sure. I don't recall it at all, and I don't even recognize my picture that you're showing me. But I guess the most people I've ever cooked for, I'm trying to remember if it's Cook Baptist Church or Calvary, had a big to do, and the first figure they gave me was 900 people at the Civic Center.
Wow.
And I said, sure, I can do that. I don't remember how many people we finally had, but it was a big function. And Rick, I have no idea how I did that. I think about it now, and at one point, a couple of college boys came to me, and we decided we would bring in plays and have a dinner theater at the Civic Center. And we did that for a while, not knowing how many people would need to have the food for, because of prepare it at the restaurant and take it to the Civic Center. And that went on, I guess, maybe a year or something like that. It was very successful. And but people would call me and say, how many cans of say string beans do I need for, say, 40 people? Well, I don't know. And I didn't know. I just know for 40 people I would do this. I can look at it and tell if it was there for 40 people, but it's just strange. But
No, you were a kitchen magician. You just knew. All right, so Harold leaves us. Take us through the how Dick Hudson came onto the scene.
had really good friends named Chick Ellis. Does that name ring a bell to you?
It's ringing a faint bell. I thought you were going to say Chick Childress, but Chick Ellis. It does ring a
He had
bell.
an insurance agency here for many years, and he was married to my best friend. And my best friend wanted me to have a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So they talked it over, and they knew a man who was widowed, and in fact he was Chick's best friend, and his name was Dick Hudson. And so they approached Dick. They wanted to have us for supper if we would come. Well, I'd heard of Dick, but I didn't really know him. He was Methodist, and he went to a different grocery store. Wasn't somebody I even would run into occasionally. Actually, he had Hudson Oil Company, which serviced, Harold had gas pumps put in at our business for his service trucks, and Dick brought gasoline when we needed gas for the pumps. But I didn't work for Harold. I was not down at that business, so I didn't know him then, just knew of him. And was really busy in the restaurant and said I didn't have time, and he had been on a vacation with his children and his grandchildren, and he didn't have time, but they would not relent. So we went. In fact, Dick called me that day that we were supposed to go, and they lived they lived out of town up close to Homer. And so Dick called me that day and said, I understand we're to go eat supper with Ruby and Chick. And I said, yes. And he said, well, we don't need to go in separate cars. I'll pick you up. And I said, well, that'll be fine. He said, where do you live? And I said, don't pick me up at home. Pick me up at the restaurant. And he said, restaurant? What restaurant? I said, it's Erma's restaurant. It's downtown on Trenton Street. So he picked me up, and I'll never forget. I was sitting kind of in front, watching through the glass, waiting for him, and he pulled into a Suburban, and this good-looking guy. Oh my gosh, he was good-looking. Got out of that truck and stepped up on the sidewalk, and I thought, that's Dick Hudson. He had on a pair of white shorts and a red shirt. And he was something to look at.
Wow.
So, anyway, we became friends that night, and so before we left their house, Dick said, y'all think you could cook supper for us again tomorrow night if she can come? And they said yes, and I said yes, and 6 months later we were married.
There you go. So, Erma Faulkner, do you have a favorite recipe that you like to prepare, or is it all good to you?
I have a recipe that I made up for chicken. I call it chicken extraordinaire. In fact, I'm in the process of looking for it now. I've given it to so many people. If anybody watching this, you happen to have my recipe for chicken extraordinaire, I would love to have it. It's just good. It's not your run of chicken casseroles, but anyway. And of course, rolls.
Right. What about desserts? Anything special that you prefer over anything else?
I guess more people ask for red velvet cake than anything, and Italian cream, and but any kind of pie or cake.
How's your pecan pie? Did it get better?
It got better. In fact, the dessert I served at the Civic Center for this church, whether it was Cook or Calvary, I can't remember. I believe it was Cook. I did the pecan pie, and my friend Ann Mabry helped me every day. She would come in and seat everyone and take their money. She was my little cashier, and she just worked an hour or two, but she came to help me that night. We had we started making pecan pies, and I don't know how many tables I had in the restaurant, but there was a few. And we worked all night long making pecan pies for that event, and they were all chewable.
Good. Good. And I bet they all were gone as well. All right, so we just got through a Peach Festival, 75th anniversary of Louisiana Peach Festival. I'm sure you must have entered the peach cookery contest through the years.
Ribbon in the peach contest every year since it's been going on, and won the overall a couple of times. But
Didn't you feel sorry for the competition?
I'd work all year finding something different, or that I could maybe twist. And I'm trying to think what the grand prize. Oh, the grand prize winner the year. And then my daughter also won the grand prize.
That's Lori?
And it was for a peach tort. And for some reason, there was a photographer there, and it was actually the first real publicity that anybody ever got for the cooking contest with the Peach Festival.
So the peach tort that Lori cooked, you say garnered the first amount of...
Well, the one that I cooked.
Oh, you cooked, not Lori.
Well, that's also what Lori entered the year she won the grand prize.
Okay.
And she
But
got
it was your recipe.
Yeah. She wanted it to be hers, so she changed some things in it. So her recipe was not exactly the same.
Gotcha.
I had entered that one too.
Give us your takeaway memories, because things change. But Peach Festival then and Peach Festival now. I mean, it's still a Ruston thing that is community oriented and everybody enjoys. What about go back to your time?
Love the Peach Festival. Love the Peach Festival. And in fact, we have friends that had children Lori's age, and I let them come into my kitchen and make a recipe, and we'd take them down for the contest. And they're all almost 60 years old now, and they still remember making peach recipes to enter in a contest. But I was surprised that it was only for one day this year, and I didn't see anything about a peach cooking contest.
There was, and here's the challenge, Erma, of being in 2025, where there is so much information to get out to the community, and so many different information channels. It's not like it was where there was a newspaper, a radio station, a television station, and you got all your information that way. It's spread far and wide. So, yeah, it would definitely happen this year, and but it's all been changed, and it's reimagined and reinvented, if you will, and but it's still keeping the same spirit of the Peach Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we wrap up, how about any characters of Lincoln Parish besides Harold and Dick, community-minded men or women of the past of Ruston and Lincoln Parish that come to your mind that you're like, I remember that person. Who would that be?
Well, I knew Clarence Falk really well, and Amelia. And
what did you know about him? Because I think Clarence Falk needs to be recognized more, and this is a chance for you to talk about.
I think so too. And his wife, Amelia, for many years with the Ruston Daily Leader, had a little funny thing on the front page I think it was about town or something like that. And if someone went out of town or did something special or had a baby, she would write about it and it would be on the front page. And everybody, I think a lot of people just bought the paper just so they could see what Amelia had written about various people or things going on. But the one thing I have left out completely, and that's my pralines.
Oh. Tell us about the pralines.
Well, it would sound like I'm bragging to say they're really good.
Go ahead and brag.
And I'm not making those anymore. I would have had one here for you today. But as you can see, I don't have a kitchen.
No.
No stove in this little apartment, so I can't make any more. But if besides the cinnamon rolls, I guess more people would talk about the pralines than anything. And speaking of, when we had the first singing Christmas tree at Temple Baptist Church, who was the governor? Edwards.
Edwin?
Yeah.
Edwin Edwards?
Yeah. Came up. He was in a little bit of trouble at the time. It had some negative reports about him. So someone in our church arranged to have him come and turn the Christmas tree lights on for us that year. Mm-hmm. And so, because he was coming, we had a little reception down in our fellowship hall for him, and I made pralines for everyone. So after the lighting and everything, there was a photographer there from the leader, and anyway, Edwin kept saying he wanted to meet the lady that made the pralines. So finally, I heard that, and I met him. And when I said, I'm the praline lady, well, he grabbed me and pulled me up to him and kissed me on the cheek just as the photographer snapped the picture. And the next day, which was, I think a Sunday, seems like we opened on a Saturday night. But anyway, there was a front page picture of me and Governor Edwards, and he was not that popular at that time, but it was a done deal, so I lived with it, and he did too. But
that's great. That is great. The singing Christmas tree. So you never climbed the singing Christmas tree to sing on it, or did you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What level did you go up? Do you know?
Not very high. We had a young woman named Margaret Williams Jones, who was a very accomplished singer, and her husband is at Tech, so she was in our choir, and we put her on the top, of course. And during the interim, she became pregnant, so the last year that I guess that she was even here, she had got the front robe instead of the top. Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't go very high.
Right. Talk about, I mean, that is a tradition unlike any other that will probably never be duplicated. A singing Christmas tree. How many people were on that tree? I want to say 100, I'm guessing.
I'm sure. Harry Thompson was our choir director at the time, and that was his thought. And other churches duplicated it, but they had it inside, and ours was outside, which made it more spectacular.
Sure. That's awesome. Any other thoughts or stories before we wrap up? I mean, this has been charming. I've enjoyed it, and we can come back and do an episode 2 if we need to.
Well, thank you. I just am awed. I can't think of anything I'd have to say that somebody wants to hear. But
no worries at all, Erma. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, you're welcome. I thank you. I'm honored that you would want to do this. In fact, I might as well tell you, I'll be 94 years old in October, so.
Congratulations, you're doing great.
Well, so far, so good.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Erma, Faulkner, Hudson here on Lincoln Legends Lore and Lagniappe, brought to you by Century Next Bank. For all that you do, what's next for you? We'll see you later.
Thank you for watching Lincoln Legends Lore and Lagniappe, presented by your Lincoln Parish Museum and Historical Society, celebrating 50 years of community support. Please follow us on Facebook for all future events as we celebrate our 50th anniversary this year. Thank you once again for your contributions of support. This has been a Godleyworks for Nonprofits production in association with Rick Godley's ATL Features. ATL stands for All Things Local. ATL also stands for All Things Lincoln.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Please drive carefully and arrive home safely. Good night.